Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Amriteshwariyai Namaha. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Pratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitamritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvamanusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavadveshinim Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pullaravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Tela Purna Prajwalito Jnanamaya Pradipa Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapane Jnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gitamrita Duhe Namaha Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Partho Vatsya Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamritam Mahata Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Namah Shivaya. So we're back. We're back in Kurukshetra in more ways than one. We're in the literal Kurukshetra of the Bhagavad Gita, and we're in the figurative Kurukshetra of the ashram, which Amma often refers to as a Kurukshetra, where we discover our true Dharma and we battle the Kaurava negativities within ourselves. So last time, if you remember, Jnanadev was telling Arjuna that this is an amazing good fortune that you have, unasked for. You stumbled upon this good fortune of a just war. Now I know we talked about what is a just war, so we talked about that. We're not going to rehash it, but anyhow, for a prince it's very important to know whether a war is just or not, because if it's just, he has to fight. If it's not, he doesn't. So Krishna told him that it was, so it's clear. And Jnanadev has added a couple other things that I didn't mention last week. I just like to share them because we have to get into that mood, that bhav again of what Krishna is trying to say to Arjuna. So Jnanadev is that sage from, I think, about the 16th century, who wrote that beautiful commentary with lots of additional details about the conversation, the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. And he always speaks, or almost always speaks, from the standpoint of Lord Krishna, which is really nice. He adds in things that are not there. And it's okay because he's God-realized soul, so he must know what he's talking about. So he said, as though Krishna were talking, he said, "It looks as though on hearing of your renown and valor, fame herself has become enamored of you and has come to choose you as her husband." This is what he says about Arjuna. You're such a lucky guy. And then he says, this opportunity has come up just like nectar falling into your mouth when you open it wide to yawn. It's like you went, oh, and then some nectar fell in your mouth. He says it's like such a coincidence, so you should be really thankful. So, and here Arjuna is complaining of it like it's a big, terrible thing. Okay, but let's move on to verse 33, because if Arjuna were ready to accept this argument, the Gita would have stopped here. But he wasn't. He had a lot of questions in his mind which Krishna had to clarify. So the dialogue goes on. Atached Tvamimam dharmyam Sangramam na karishyasi Tata swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. Let's start from in the back. We haven't done that corner much. Or unsuspecting people sitting in the back. Anybody over there, it's fine.
Now, if you do not engage in this battle, which is in accord with Dharma, and casting away your own Dharma in good faith, you will incur sin.
Okay. So, Krishna, like we said earlier, I mentioned that Lord Krishna is trying to, by hook or by crook, he's trying to get Arjuna to do his Dharma. So he has to line up all these various arguments somehow to convince him. And he already stated all the philosophy, which somehow was lost on Arjuna. Not somehow, because it was such a high philosophy, it was lost on us also, probably. So anyhow, he's trying the next level. So if someone doesn't believe in ethics, ethics or merit, then what do you say? He's talking about sin. Now, at least he can say that. He's taking it another level down to the level of gain and loss. And he's talking about what's going to happen to Arjuna if he doesn't fight. He's done saying you're going to get good things if you do fight. Now he says if you don't fight, you're going to get bad things. So if Arjuna says he's not interested in heaven, this is what you have to do. What if Arjuna says, Krishna says you're going to go to heaven. What if Arjuna says, I don't want to go to heaven. I want to be with Bhishma and Drona here on earth. Then is that the end of the argument? You can't let it be the end of the argument. It's like the mother or father, if they know that the kid is going to do the wrong thing, they have to say something. No, if you don't clean your room, the boogeyman's going to get you. They might say something like that, right? Whatever it is, they have to teach good culture to their child. So, Krishna is saying, well, if you don't care about heaven, what about your esteem, your social status, and all your fame? You don't care about that either? What about sin? You're going to incur sin. So even from the worldly perspective, he has to do his duty in order to preserve his honor and avoid sin. So at least in some traditions, there's two concepts of sin. Ultimately, from the Vedantic standpoint, Amma says there's only one type of sin, which is anything, any thought, word, or action that takes you away from your true self, or God. That is sin. It's never against somebody else or something else, really. If it takes you away from realization of God or the self, that's what a sin is. But most people could say, well, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I'm not interested in the self, I want to have fun. So then you have to start talking about scary types of sin and things like that to keep people in line so they don't hurt themselves and get bad karma. So then the tradition, at least Vedanta, and I know Christianity talks about it too, sins of commission and sins of omission, right? What's a sin of commission? What? Yeah, you put it in a way that kind of makes sense as a general rule.
You're contributing something negative.
Doing something you're not supposed to do, right? Now, sins of omission are those sins you were supposed to do but didn't do, right? No, I'm kidding. Okay. What is a sin of omission?
Don't do something you shouldn't.
Yeah?
Not doing what you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
so not helping someone who needs help.
Right, exactly. That's called pratyavaya, papa, in Sanskrit. So this is so Krishna is actually talking about both of them here. What's the duty of a prince, for example, or a warrior in those days? Huh? Okay. What's the sin of omission? So the duty is to fight. So, and his duty is also the opposite thing, right? What if you put it in a opposite sense? You have a duty to not run away, right? Doesn't that make sense? So you say that the fire people, the firefighters, their duty is to put out the fire, which means they also have a duty to not sleep through the alarm when it goes off, or to not go there and just watch the house burn down or something like that. So they have two different types of duty. So Arjuna's duty is also to not run away from the battlefield. He got to the battlefield, but then he's talking about running away. So he's facing another type of unjust action, adharma. So what Shankaracharya has said about this whole scenario, he's that great saint of about 1200 years or more ago. He said that the problem comes when Arjuna or any of us identifies with the wrong facet of their individuality. Arjuna was indeed a disciple of Bhishma and Drona, right? And we are all sons and daughters and maybe fathers or spouses to, somebody. We may be brothers and sisters to somebody also. But which aspect of your individuality you choose to identify with should depend on the circumstances that you're in at that time. Amma gives the example of a surgeon. Let's say a surgeon, he's at work or she's at work and they're doing surgery, or they're a businessman or a woman and they're in the office, calculating profit and loss. When they go home, Amma says when you go home, you have to be a father or a mother or a wife or a husband. You can't be like a doctor at home, bossing everybody around like like your staff, or you can't be a businessman calculating profit loss from family members, that's a different aspect of your individuality. But when you go back to the office, you have to be that aspect of yourself. So here Arjuna is misidentifying with the ex-disciple in him, which is not the aspect of his individuality that is relevant on the battlefield. When he went to the battlefield, he went wearing all his armor with all his weapons. Obviously, he was identified with the prince, the warrior in him who was there to defend the defenseless people. And then suddenly he misidentified with something that actually didn't even exist anymore because they're not his gurus anymore. They were at one point. So same thing goes for us. Amma says if we want to achieve dharma, do our dharma and achieve anything in life, we have to make sure we're identifying with the right aspect of ourselves under each circumstance. So what, I think this is the verse where Krishna mentions it. Just going to go back to it. Yeah, so he refers to it in the previous verses. So if you infer the contrary, it would be that the sin and the infamy exists not only in this birth, but in the future births. He says you'll have joy and fame in this birth and in future births if you do your dharma. So the opposite is also true. If you don't do your dharma, you're going to suffer in this birth as well as after death. So even if you're not interested in heaven, you have to do your duty just to avoid going to hell. Doesn't sound like a really high philosophical argument, but he's talking to somebody who is, again, collapsed on the floor, crying, and not getting up when all these people are sitting there ready to shoot arrows. So it's a very serious situation. We have to remember what the situation is. He says you're going to lose all your name and fame and the kingdom, everything. You're going to lose the subtle things and the tangible things. So there's loss in this life and in the afterworld, no matter how you look at it. And keep in mind that Arjuna's whole life he has spent acquiring name and fame and respect of all the people. He was probably the most famous warrior of the day. That's why, the Kauravas were shaking. In the first chapter, it says the Kauravas were shaking when they let their lion roar of the Pandavas, when they made that big roar. And Jnanadev says, commentary to Arjuna, he says, hearing your name, the Kauravas are shaking just like a wild elephant shakes when he hears the roar of a lion in the jungle. So this, such a greatly revered Arjuna, all that fame is going to go down the drain. That's what he's trying to scare him with, this threat of losing all his fame. So that is a kind of a very low-level ethical argument that you would make to a prince. And that's the end of all the ethical arguments. Next he's going to go on to something even lower. He's really stooping to great depth. Yes?
So he's appealing to Arjuna's ego.
Yep. Amma does that sometimes too. I remember she said to me once, and it was like, I caught it a little bit afterwards. I don't remember what I did. I did something dumb, and then she said, I can't believe that even you would do something like that. After your education and everything, I only have a bachelor's degree. I don't have any education to speak of. You've got all this education and everything, and even you made such a mistake. And initially it was like, oh gosh, I let her down. But then I was like, what education do I have? I don't have any special education. But she's pricking my ego. She knew I had an ego about being smart. So she's like, even a smart person? And you're like, wait a second. So yes, Amma will push the button. And then whatever it takes to get us to do the right thing. Because obviously we weren't careful enough to do the right thing from the beginning, because we didn't do the right thing. Now Krishna is going to keep pushing Arjuna's buttons one by one. Let's see how he does it. Akirtim chapi bhutani katayishanti tevyayam sambhavitasya chakirtir maranadati richate. Okay, so now Uma can keep the mic over there, I think.
Moreover, men will ever tell of your disgrace, and to a man of honor, ill fame is worse than death.
Oh, wow. How about that? So see, just think of whatever it is you're proud of. Just think whatever yours is. We all have pride of something. So you have pride in your knowledge of something or whatever it is. And so let's say Krishna or Amma says to you, if you do the wrong thing here, forevermore people are going to say that you didn't know anything about X, or that you were horrible at Y, or something like that. And then for you it'll be like, oh, the worst thing that you could imagine would happen. So he's really trying to prick Arjuna's ego. So he says, in the previous verse, he says, you're going to lose all the pleasure and fame. Here, he continues, he goes even lower, and he says, you're going to incur ill fame, right? So not just sin, not just losing all your fame, you're going to incur ill fame, or you're going to become infamous. So even if Arjuna doesn't believe in all this imperceptible merit, sin, heaven, dharma, the Atma, or whatever it is, ill fame is something very tangible. You're going to be walking through the town and everybody is going to be ridiculing you. You can't go anywhere and feel comfortable. Where are you going to go even if you leave this battlefield? He may be asking him, So even then, so he still has to fight. If you don't, all your respect in society will be lost, and that's everything to a warrior, to a man of honor. He's calling him a man of honor, you know. So these princes have very rajasic egos, you know. Not that I've met one, but we know that the history tells us the story, you know, wars are fought over things that people say, insults that are spoken. So, and another thing that Jnanadev says, he says, look, you came to this battlefield, you know, ready to fight. If you had decided in advance not to fight, it would have been a different story. But now you're here, armed to the hilt, you've got your armor and everything, and then if you turn around now, what's going to happen? Nobody's going to think that you were doing this out of compassion or love or anything like that. They're just going to say you chickened out. The last minute too, just to make it worse. So you can give any reasons you want, nobody's going to believe it, they're just going to say it's all excuses. And then they're going to start spreading rumors to the contrary. And to make matters worse, you're already famous. If you were anonymous, if you were a nobody, it wouldn't matter. But for a famous person to be disgraced like that is really bad. And to be insulted in private is okay, but to be insulted in public, my gosh, what are you going to do, Arjuna? So the pain of death is only for a short time, but the pain of infamy is forever. He's making it sound really bad. You're going to be disgraced forever, ever. And what Jnanadev also says, he says that even if you retreat from here and go to the mountains, you're not going to have any peace of mind because the Kauravas are going to stalk you. They're going to track you down, they're going to capture you, and they're going to shoot arrows at you from all directions. They're going to just humiliate you. He's just making it sound like you have no hope, you know. So, and he says, even if you survive, it's going to be a life not worth living. This is what Jnanadev says. So has anybody ever read Socrates' Crito, the Crito? It's not, he didn't write it, it's Plato. Plato wrote it, Socrates didn't write anything. So the Crito is a story about a conversation between Socrates and a rich man named Crito in ancient Greece. Socrates is in jail, you know the story, and then Crito said, look, I can just bribe the jail guard, you know, he's mine for some money. And then he'll just say, go, you can leave. And so he was trying to convince Socrates to just escaping from jail. I can do it. I can give you money. You can go anywhere you want and you can start a new life. What do you think Socrates did? Think he took him up on the offer? What was his reason for not taking him up on the offer? There's multiple reasons, but there was one very compelling reason that ties in here.
He did not lose face.
Sorry?
He did not want to lose face.
He didn't care about losing face, actually. I really feel Socrates was a great being. He said, even if I was convicted unjustly, my whole life I've been talking about the importance of democracy and justice. And I was convicted in a court of law in a democratic country. Not real democracy. They were somewhat democratic in those days. He said, after speaking about it all these years and saying how important it is, when it works against me and I reject it, who's going to believe anything I said? And he said also, if I escape from jail and I go to some country, having escaped from some other country, who's going to receive me? Who will trust someone who behaves like that? What kind of a life will that be? So he willingly drank the hemlock and died after that. It's a really amazing story. Anyhow, Socrates was my first guru, so to speak, before I met Amma. I felt he was such an amazing being. So, the question is, how can someone who was revered so highly like Arjuna, how can such a person be disgraced, dishonored, like the way Krishna is making it sound he will be? Krishna, in case Arjuna says, they can't disgrace me, I'm above disgrace. Then Krishna says, well, think again. And he gives another argument in verse 35. Bhayad ranad uparatam mamsyante tvam maharatha Yesham Chatvam Bahumato Bhutva Yasyasi Laghavam.
Verse 35, the great warriors will think you fled from battle out of fear, and they who held you in esteem will belittle you.
Yep. Well, I kind of gave it away in the last verse. They're going to think that you fled out of fear. Because where's the time to explain? It's not like you can send them an email afterwards, Actually, what I was really doing, and even if you sent a letter, who's going to believe? You come to the battlefield with a sword and everything and the bows and arrows, and then right in front of the other army, you turn around and leave. Who's going to say you fled out of compassion? Who's going to believe that excuse? So, and the others will spread rumors not only, to spite you, but the thing is, they're also the ones in power. The Kauravas are the ones ruling. So which party has more influence, the ruling government or the opposition? Ruling government always has more power. They can spread the rumors really well. And it's also like the tabloids, Let's say the tabloid comes out with an article that says, President Obama caught drunk gambling in Las Vegas, question mark at the end. Nobody pays attention to the question mark. It's like it's already become a fact as soon as they read the headline. And there's a picture of Obama like with a glass of water, something in his hand, like that, So everybody thinks it's true, right? And then how do you clear your name once you've been disgraced like that? So the problem is that when infamy comes, until infamy comes, everybody enjoys fame, name and fame. But when ill fame comes, they regret the fact that they were famous to begin with, right? Don't these famous people beat up the camera, the paparazzi, whatever they call them, when they get upset? That's when they realize that this famousness is not as great as it was cooked up to be. So, if we ever wish we were famous, then wait till ill fame comes, and then you'll wish you were completely anonymous at that time. So this is maybe what Arjuna was wishing. It would have been better to be a nobody. And he says, everybody knows, and this is additional commentary, everybody knows that you swore you were going to kill Bhishma if there was a war. It's just common knowledge amongst everybody. So then, now you come and you have your opportunity and you leave. No one's going to believe what you say. They're just going to say that you chickened out. And once the rumor starts, how are you going to get rid of it? You're going to be hiding in the mountains somewhere, So which is, again, bolsters the argument that you chickened out. So the dishonor is so difficult to bear for a hero, like he said in the last verse. It's like the opposite of a beggar winning the lottery. If Bill Gates wins the lottery, what does it matter? He's already rich. If a beggar wins the lottery, $22 million or whatever it is, wow. Now think of the opposite. Bill Gates becomes a beggar. Is that more difficult than is that easy, or is it easy for a beggar to continue being a beggar, right? Continuing to be a beggar is okay, but going from the height of glory to the height of to the depth of infamy is really tough, unbearable for a prince. So he's really pushing Arjuna to the maximum, and he keeps pushing him because Arjuna probably still hasn't gotten up off the floor. Verse 36. Avachavadamscha bahun padishanti tavahitaha nindantastava samarthyam tato dukkhataram nukim. Okay.
Your enemies will speak many ill words of you and will deride your strength. What greater pain than this?
Yeah. Well, if you don't consider yourself to have any strength, it's not a painful thing at all. If someone tells me that I'm weak, just look at me, you can tell I don't have much physical strength to speak of because I'm so skinny. For me, it's nothing. But if you are, Arnold Schwarzenegger or whoever the latest Arnold Schwarzenegger is, someone says you're a weakling, my gosh, for them it would be a real insult, right? So this is what Arjuna is having to go through. So basically, he's saying, look, don't think that they're all going to praise you for your noble act and compassionate act of leaving the war. They're not going to use any sweet words to talk about you. They're going to use only really bad words. And actually, the word he uses here, I think our translation is a little bit inadequate to describe the Sanskrit. Avacha vadamscha. So what he's saying is, they're going to speak unspeakable things about you. They're going to say, unspeakable calumny about you. So which is worse? For someone to tell you, I was talking with Joe and he said that you're a fool. Or if he said, I was talking with Joe and Joe said something about you. I can't tell you what he said, it was so bad. Which one makes you feel worse? He said something and it was unspeakable, forget it, I'm not going to tell you. This is what Krishna is doing to him, It's so bad, I don't even want to say what they're going to say. So unspeakable is the real translation. And if you're royalty and someone's going to say unspeakable things about you, what kind of words are those? Now, another example of someone pricking the ego of a kshatriya, of a king or a prince, in the ancient epics is in the Ramayana. You might remember the story of Dasharatha and Kaikeyi. Dasharatha gives a promise to Kaikeyi, he will help her. Whatever, if she asks him for a boon, he'll give her whatever she wants. So she comes on one very inopportune moment and asks, now I want my boon. Remember what she asked for? What was it?
She made my son king.
Yes. She wanted him to make her son king instead of Rama. And she wanted him to banish Rama to the forest. So Dasharatha was ready to give her anything. It's like the story of Lord Yama, Nachiket. It's like, I'll give you anything, don't ask for that. This is what he said. And finally, Kaikeyi she felt she had no choice. She used a very powerful argument against the king, which was, all your forefathers have kept their words and are famous for that. Your whole heritage has a spotless name. But if you go back on your word, you'll be the first person in the whole ancestry that brought ill fame to your family. Do you want your family line to remain blameless? Or do you want to go down in history as the one who brought ill fame? What can you do? If you were completely established in Dharma, you'd say, get out. Who wants you for a wife, or a husband, whoever's saying it, But he broke down. He says, I can't bear that. And then he accepted her request. That's how the whole story began, with Rama being banished and everything. It's really a good lesson. If it's a question of doing Dharma or preserving our name, just throw the name out the window. Because what good is a name if you're doing a Dharma? So all over the world, this ill fame is so powerful for Kshatriyas. It's a very weak spot for them. And Jnaneshwar, or Jnanadev, adds this commentary. He says, Arjuna, don't think that they're going to let you escape. And this is where he says, they're going to go to the mountain, even if you go to the mountains and live in hiding, they're going to capture you and humiliate you. And the words they speak to you will pierce your heart, is what he says. So even if you don't get pierced on the battlefield, you're going to get pierced subtly by what they do to you afterwards. So all these things are because, Krishna is saying all these things to Arjuna because when he was trying to embolden him, empower him, and invoke his strength, Arjuna didn't respond. There was no response. He was just completely depressed. So if somebody, like a Mahatma will always first try to bring out our strength, to invoke our strength. But if that doesn't work, what's left? poke your weakness. Poke your weakness and use that for good purpose. In the end, you're going to have to fight anyhow, so why not fight and do your duty now? That's the line of reasoning. 37. Hato va prapsyasi swargam jitva va
जित्वा
bhokshase mahim
भोक्ष्यसे मही
tasmaduttishta kaunteya yuddhaya krita nishchaya.
Slain, you will reach heaven. Victorious, you will enjoy the earth. Therefore, O son of Kunti, stand up, resolved to fight.
Okay, stand up. He says this to Arjuna over and over again. Stand up, get up, get up. Because he's not getting up. But also, there's something to be said for your inner stance, so to speak. You can be standing up already, physically, but mentally, you're not standing up, You're you've lost all your confidence, you're depressed, you don't know what to do. So inside, you're completely distraught, as though you're completely slouched and collapsed on the floor. So he's trying to get him to stand up in more ways than one, literally and figuratively. And he repeats this to him over and over again. And he says, fight, right? Prepare to fight. But what would you say to, say, like a mother who's, I've heard stories about mothers who have just newborn babies. And it's intense, right? That's with all the things that we hear, even if we've never raised a child or had a baby. It's supposed to be very intense the first, few months especially. And I remember hearing the story about a mother dealing with her daughter who just gave birth. This is in Japan. And the daughter gave birth young. I think she was like 23 or something. And she was not at all prepared for childbirth or any of what was supposed to happen afterwards. She was crying to her mother every day on the phone. So what would the mother say to the daughter? What does the mother say to the daughter who has to raise a child? No. Huh? And essentially the exact same thing that Krishna is saying to Arjuna. Stand up and fight. It's not fighting the baby. You're nurturing the baby, you're being patient or whatever it is, but it's essentially the same message that Krishna is giving to Arjuna. Be strong. The baby needs you to be strong right now. If you collapse, what's going to happen to the baby? The baby needs a strong mother. Or if it's a president of a company, you have to be strong and weather the bad economic times, whatever it might be. So the message is universal message. It's not really about fighting. It's about doing your dharma despite the challenges. So if you win, you're going to get back the kingdom that you've been thinking about for 13 years. Even if you fail doing your swadharma, you're still going to purify your mind, which means you will have more access to knowledge of the self, which means you will grow spiritually. So we may sometimes ourselves wonder, what happens to a seeker who doesn't make it to the goal and who kind of falls from the path at one time or another? Like Arjuna, let's say he does the wrong thing, or let's say he tries to do the right thing but he fails. Is all lost? Is everything lost? Start all over again from square one? Why do we think that? Why do we think that you don't? Are we just hoping? We are hoping. Krishna talks about it in chapter 6, if you're curious. You can look at verses 40, 41, 42 or so. He says, one who does good never comes to grief. There is no destruction for him, her, neither in this world nor in the next. Having attained to the worlds of the righteous and having dwelt there for eternal years, we know it's not really eternal, it means long time. One who failed in yoga is reborn in a house of the pure and wealthy. Else he is born in a family of wise yogins. There he gains touch with the knowledge that was acquired in the former body and strives more than before for perfection. By that very former practice is one born on, even though unwilling. Isn't that nice? Means you create a momentum in this life, even if you don't reach the destination. When you take the next body, that momentum stays with you. But only the spiritual things stay with you. Because Amma has said very clearly, all the money, all the wealth, all the name, fame, all that's gone. So you start all over again, you have to build up the name and fame from square one. But all the good spiritual momentum you developed, it carries you on in the next life. So we can have confidence. Krishna is telling Arjuna, you should have confidence, that even if you fail at your dharma, you're not really losing anything. Now here's a question, playing the devil's advocate. In verse 8 of chapter 2, Arjuna says he doesn't want any kingdom or anything, right? Now here, 19 verses later, Krishna is dangling the kingdom carrot in front of him. You're going to get the kingdom back. Why is he doing that? Because Arjuna already told him he's not interested. What could be the reason?
Krishna knows his mind. He knows that even though he says he doesn't want it, in reality he does want it.
Ah, exactly. Ever heard of a prince that was disinterested in having a kingdom? It's like saying that after you lose the World Cup, you say, I didn't really want to win, Trained for 4 years and 8 hours a day, but I didn't really care about winning the World Cup, Who's going to believe you, So, yeah, we know Arjuna really does care about the kingdom. Krishna knows very well. He had a temporary kind of vairagya, or detachment. I think I told you about it before, Shmashana Vairagya. Anybody remember what Shmashana Vairagya is? Remember what it was? Shmashana means the cremation ground. Detachment, cremation ground detachment was the direct translation. What is that? What was that? The kind of detachment you get.
When we go to cremation ground, we feel detachment and one day I have to come here, so let's forget everything.
Then what happens after that? You forget that you were going to forget everything. Right? Amma says, while you're in the cremation ground, you see the body burning in front of you, you think, wow, everything is temporary. My uncle's gone, my grandpa's gone, whatever, somebody's gone, But on the way home, you're like, okay, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight, And any good TV shows on, it's like, it's gone. So, yeah. So, that desire remains in Arjuna in a subtle form. He's just kind of like a pouting child, I don't want the chocolate, you can have it, it's like, but Amma knows that everybody wants, all the kids want chocolate. Have you seen how she uses that to entice them during darshan? They're getting, sometimes if you stand next to Amma for a while, you see there are some screaming kids during darshan, and Amma will hold the chocolate. And they're like, no, I don't want it. And then she holds it on the other side. When they turn away over there, she holds it over here. And they're looking at it and they kind of go, they're going for it, So I told you the story about Tessa, right? My brother's sister, daughter. She was here some time ago. She came to Amma, the power of chocolate. Amma knows that it has a lot of power with kids. So Tessa came up and she was standing next to Amma. And I asked her, what are you here for? Are you here for chocolate? And she says, she was very honest. She was like 3 years old at the time. And I said, and Amma didn't notice that she was there yet. So I said to her, I was just playing with her, I said, if I said you had to choose Amma or chocolate, which one would you choose? My gosh, she was sat there for an eternity thinking about that one, And then Amma turned over and looked at her and she said, you want chocolate? She said, okay. And she gave her a chocolate, and I said, I was just telling her, what happens if you had to choose? And then I said, tell her the story about the gold, the gold, solid gold, and the bowl of chocolate. You know that story, Amma says, right? If you hold out a bowl of chocolate to a child in one hand and then a piece of gold in the other hand, which one will the child choose? Bowl of chocolate. Child doesn't know that if he takes the gold, he can buy chocolate for the rest of his life. So Amma said, told me to tell her that story. So I told her, which one do you want? She said, chocolate. I said, if you choose the gold, you can have chocolate for the rest of your life. And she said, yippee! And so Amma said, which one do you want? She says, gold. And then I said, and Amma said, good girl. Amma said, see, it's because Amma chose the gold a long time ago that she's able to give chocolate to so many people right now. And Tessa said, yeah, wow. And I said, yeah, Tessa, if you choose gold, you can give chocolate to everybody. She says, no. Gonna keep all the chocolate to herself. So still, 5 years old, you're not quite ready to accept that concept. So, now there's another point I want to ask here, which is a very important point. It's a devil's advocate point. So, Krishna is telling him, fight, right? Get up and fight. But after that, he still has about 16 and a half chapters of teachings that he's going to give Arjuna. Why did he give all that 16 and a half chapters? He's already telling him, fight. Why doesn't he just end there? Do your duty, fight. Why does he have to go on and on and on giving all these arguments? He already taught Arjuna the essence of the Gita teaching in chapter 2 up to this point. He could have just commanded him and said, look, like it or lump it, you got to do this. I'm Krishna, for Pete's sake, So, why didn't he? Or why did he go on teaching for such a long time?
At this point, he doesn't see Krishna as God yet. Krishna hasn't revealed himself, so he still has too many doubts.
He has too many doubts, but don't forget that he supposedly surrendered himself at Krishna's feet at verse 10 or so of this second chapter. So he says, you're my guru, I'm your disciple, right? So, it's just paying lip service, but is there any other reasons we can think of why Krishna's not just making a command?
Because he wants
He wanted to convince him. Ramu, you raised him.
Is it possible that his mind can change again after a while? So he has to go on strengthening the resolve?
Ah, very good. How do you strengthen somebody's resolve? How do you strengthen their conviction in something, whatever it may be?
give him more validation.
Beat them over and over the head with a stick? No.
Give him more validation, evidence, insight.
Insight.
Feel that
Teach
they
them.
made the right
You
decision.
have to teach them, basically, right? So this is what Krishna is doing, and this is what Arjuna is doing with us. Amma could come along and say, here's the Amrita 10 commandments, or the Amrita 100 commandments. This is it. You want to be my disciple? You got to do all this stuff. That's it. And then when you're ready, come back and see me. She could do that. But she doesn't. She doesn't even have one commandment except like love and compassion in vague forms. And then what she does is she just teaches us for years and years and years, especially through her example, yeah?
It seems like Krishna's breaking down Arjuna's resistance piece by piece
Right.
to this notion of fighting.
Right.
And that when this resistance is finally maybe surrender or near surrender, then he's really going to be more receptive to being given enlightenment.
Right, exactly. So it's a step-by-step process of conveying knowledge to the disciple, which is basically in lay person's terms, it's just teaching. Because what we're talking about is the contrast between a command and teaching somebody something. So Sadgurus or realized masters rarely ever give commands. It's very important to remember that. Amma never really commands anybody anything. I mean, only once in a while, if you're like about to stick your finger in the electrical socket, she might say, stop, or do an action, tantamount to that. So she's very careful not to give people commands, and she even says over and over again, especially in the question and answer sessions during the retreats, she says, Amma never forces anybody to do anything. I'm just saying this, afterwards you guys do what you want. And Krishna even says that later in the Gita. We're going to talk about that. So what's the difference between a command and teaching? We're getting at it. We're getting close to it here. Commands are usually given to instill fear in people. No questions allowed. Just do what I say, not what I do, or just do what I say, period. But usually if you're giving a teaching, like what Ramu was saying, is that the person who receives the teaching assumedly will be following those instructions based on his or her own conviction after that. They're aware of why they're supposed to do it, and they'll continue to do it over and over again. So like, let's say you tell your child, you got to pray every night, or I'm not going to give you your allowance. They may pray every night, right? Maybe daddy's looking at me, mommy's peeking on me, or something like that. I remember one of the devotee parents, told me that their child is a little bit mischievous. Sometimes the boys especially are mischievous. So they told their son, we hid a camera in the school bus. We can see everything that you're doing, so you better behave yourself. And they knew that the boy would have a doubt whether it was really true. And then they started asking the kids, did he do any naughty things in the bus? And they found out that he did a few naughty things. So when he came home, one day they said, we saw you on the camera doing this in the bus. And he was like, oh my God, there is a camera in the bus, So he'll behave himself for some time, right? But inside, there's a rebellious, boy who wants to do naughty things still. That boy has not gone away, right? That's the problem. So he won't get any benefit really from being good either if he's doing it just out of fear. We should be doing good things because we feel it's the right thing to do. Even praying, we don't want to do it as an obligation. So if we teach the meaning or the reason or the rationale behind it also, then that understanding will support us always afterwards. Only precondition is that you have to have enough intellectual ability to understand the arguments put forth. Children generally don't have that, which is why parents have to kind of order them. Once they get a mental capacity to understand the rationale, you can start explaining it to them. Only problem is that teaching is very difficult. And if you look at Amma's style, it is so time-consuming. It is so laborious. She spends so much time. People, when they get confused about things, they come to her during darshan. Amma, why is it like this? Why is it like that? Why do I have to do seva? Viveka's not here, I can tell you a story about Viveka. First year he was on tour staff, he'll tell you the story himself. He got to Seattle, I don't know, it was a long time ago. Got to Seattle and he's so happy, he's such an exuberant, enthusiastic guy. And Amma assigned him to the kitchen staff, Kitchen staff is really tough, especially 10 years ago, So he's doing all this hard work in the kitchen, long hours. And by LA, he was completely worn out. But that's just 3 cities, So because we were friends and we speak the same language, he came to me in LA and he says, hey, I want to go to Amma and ask her why is it like this, blah, 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 So he went and he was telling Amma all the reasons why he wanted to quit this kitchen seva and everything. And Amma, I don't know how long she talked with him to try and explain to him why it's actually necessary, etc., etc. It's not so bad, blah, blah, blah. And then in the end, she says, no, you don't have to do it. If you want to do something else, it's okay. He was like, no, I'll do the kitchen seva, So, but she spent, I don't know, maybe an hour talking with him. She could have just said, like it or leave it. You couldn't go back to the kitchen, or you couldn't go back to Japan. I don't care. It's up to you, Probably most other gurus would say something like that, because they don't have Amma's patience and compassion. So it's laborious, but Amma does it. And Arjuna's wavering mind is precisely because of his lack of conviction. If Krishna orders him, like Ramu said, later he might say, it's because Krishna ordered me that all these bad things happen. There was one couple, not one, many couples, they come to Amma and they complain about their relationship to Amma, And they say like, Mama, why is it like this? We're devotees, we're your disciples, we prayed all the time, and still we're not getting along, It's like, what's wrong here? Where's the meaning in spirituality? Amma's like, just imagine if I had been the one that told them to have a relationship, what they would say about me afterwards. Even without my saying anything, they're blaming me for the relationship, So if I'm the one, forget it. So usually if two people come to Amma, they say, should we have a relationship? She'll be like, it's up to you. If you want to have a relationship, go ahead. Because she knows relationships, even on our own, we're upset. So just imagine when we're with another person. It doesn't take much to get us worked up. So our lack of intellectual or spiritual conviction is the reason why we can't stick to our sadhana, or we can't get along with other people, etc. Meditation, mantra japa, fasting, whatever, coming to satsang, coming to Gita class, all these things, basically we waver in our conviction about them because we're not really convinced. We don't have enough understanding of the benefit that they give. So when you don't understand it, sometimes suffering is a really good way to help you understand the benefit of it. So we can learn that way too. So Amma gives a really good example that helps understand why gurus teach and don't command. She's talking about a doctor. So let's say you're a doctor, medical doctor, and you have a patient, and you say, you have this condition, you have something or other, and for that you have to take this pill. And 3 times a day after food, come see me, 2 weeks. That's good enough for the patient, right? The patient doesn't really need to know any more than that. Even if you try to explain, he's not going to understand anything. But is it enough for a medical student? Someone who's in medical school? And then if a patient comes with flu, give him these 2 pills and then tell him to come see you in 2 weeks. The students are going to say, why? What is the connection between the flu and the pill? How does it work? What if it doesn't work? You have to explain all those things to the students because you have a different dharma to them. You have to make them understand why it works. Not just because they're students, but because they have the aptitude to understand it, right? There's no need explaining something to somebody who's not going to understand it. That's why sometimes if we ask Amma spiritual questions, she sometimes doesn't answer. The Baba Research Institute, in the Baba Atomic Research Institute in Mumbai or Pune, wherever it is. Amma went and met the scientists from there a long time ago. Anybody knew that? Decades ago, yeah. Janani's nodding her head, yeah, she knew that. So she goes and meets these atomic scientists, and they ask her some questions about nuclear physics or who knows what, I don't even know what it was. They asked Amma some questions, and then Amma answered a lot of them, and then at one point they asked a question, and Amma said, Amma can't answer that question for you. And they said, why not? She said, because you only understand 3 dimensions. Actually, there's 9 dimensions, but you have no capacity to understand all the dimensions, and to understand this, you have to understand more than 3 dimensions. So what do you say in response to that? You just say, okay, fine. So if I can understand like 4 or 5 dimensions, I'll come back and ask the question later. So you have the student or disciple has to be capable of understanding the answer. Only then does a dharma occur in the teacher. Like when people first come to the ashram, maybe not these days, but some time ago, Amma used to often say, they come and they say, Amma, tell me, what should my sadhana be? In those days, there was always lots of meditation. Even when I first got there, was still lots of meditation, minimum 3 hours of meditation a day. And people would come and say, Amma, what should I do for sadhana? And she would say, okay, you meditate 5 hours a day. So they would go meditate 5 hours a day, perhaps 2-3 days is okay. 4 days, 5 days go by. After 1 week goes by, they're so sick of sitting for 5 hours. They come back to Amma, I just have this restless mind. I can't sit for 5 hours. She said, okay, do some seva. Then they do seva, and then when you do seva, lots of problems happen also, right? But then you think, well, if the option is sitting for meditation for 5 hours, maybe these problems are not so bad. But if you came to the ashram and said, what's my dharma? I'm do seva all day long. And you'll be, oh my God, Amma told me to do seva, and I don't get any time to meditate, and it's Amma's fault, right? So usually there's no commands. She gives you a chance, and then once you realize what is really good for your mind, you gravitate towards that. That's why in the 18th chapter, verse 63, Krishna says to Arjuna, "Thus has wisdom more secret than all that is secret been declared to thee by me. Reflect over it all and act as you please." This is what Krishna says to Arjuna. Now, think of the detachment. You just gave a teaching for 18 chapters, and you're so detached that you can tell the guy, oh, you think about it, do what you want. Normally we would, I just spent 5 hours telling you, now you better do what I said. We would think I wasted all my time and you didn't follow my advice. But Krishna is detached, so he doesn't say that. So the key words here are reflect over it all, right? Because, we should be, when Amma comes, we should be writing copious notes when she talks and reflecting on it every day. Only then do we really qualify to get the next satsang from her. So think about it. I'm not trying to be, critical. I'm just saying, in the old days, disciples used to wait for years for one teaching from the Guru. 12 years of seva, the Guru comes and tells you one teaching. Another 12 years of seva, you meditate on the last teaching for 12 years and they come and tell you something else. But Amma likes to hear our sincere spiritual questions, so we have to ask sincere spiritual questions, not just, to show our intelligence. She never really gets impatient with our questions. If you look at during the retreats, sometimes people can ask the silliest questions by my judgment, by not Amma's judgment, not by Amma's judgment. You think, oh my gosh, who gave that guy the microphone or something? What kind of a question is that? But she still answers. She still answers, she's so patient. And if we say anything, she'll be like, be quiet, So she's patient. It's just like Lord Yama praising Nachiketas for all his good questions. If you ask a good question, they're happy. If you ask a dumb question, they're patient. That's the only difference. So this is the end of the teaching on why Arjuna should fight. He gave the spiritual teaching, he gave the ethical teaching, and then he gave a very worldly teaching of gain and loss. So having said all of this, now Krishna shifts to the concept of how he should fight, or what kind of attitude he should have while fighting. So just to summarize up to here, because we're shifting, there's a shift that's about to take place here. So chapter 2, verse 11 to 25, those of you who came halfway through, you can just make note of this. Verse 11 to 25, Krishna is talking about the self, how it is eternal and unchanging. Verse 26 to 30 is talking mostly that the anatma, or the non-self, the world, is impermanent and constantly changing. This is the main theme. This is all like very high philosophical truth, or what we call jnana kanda in Vedanta. Then, from verse 31, it's what we call karma kanda, or sort of worldly thought, or worldly arguments. Verse 31, he talks about Arjuna's duty, or his swadharma. Verse 32 and 37, he talks about gain. And from verses 33 to 36, he talks about loss. So many different arguments to try and establish the point. Now he's going to transition into a new topic. We're going to cover up to verse 38, and then we'll close or take time for questions. Sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labhau jaya jayau tato yudhaya yujjasva naivam papam avapsyasi. Okay.
Having gained equanimity in pleasure and pain, in gain and loss, in victory and defeat, then come out to fight. Thus you will not incur sin.
Again, he's telling him to fight, right? Don't worry, not gonna get any sin by doing so. You can't say that to just anybody. You can say that to a police officer or a soldier, right? So, the previous verse concludes that first phase. Now, Krishna is introducing the next phase of the teaching, which is, there's two transition verses, 38 and 39 are like transition into the next topic. So up to here was what we said, Jnana Yoga, or the knowledge of the right view of life. Now from here on it's transition, and he's going to move into a new topic, which is Karma Yoga. Before I said that chapter 2 contains virtually every aspect of Krishna's teaching. So he touches on both the yoga of knowledge and the yoga of action here, because they're interconnected and both are absolutely required. So Jnana Yoga, or the yoga of knowledge, was, or of wisdom perhaps you could say, is like the right view on life, and Karma Yoga is the right way of life. How to act in the world. So, let's say you have lots of duties, and you have duties to family members or people in your life, but there'll always be people that you find pleasant, and then people you find, what? Unpleasant. So to do a duty towards someone you like is easy or difficult? Easy, you know, he's always nice to me, he's always smiling, you know, he does nice things for me, he says nice things about me, so quickly I do my duties to that person, whoever it is. What about the person who's kind of always grumpy and just complains and says negative things to you? If you have to do something for them, how do you feel inside when you're trying to do it? Huh? Resentful. Do you do it first or last? It's usually like, if we procrastinate, well, I can do that later, you know. It always gets relegated to the back or the bottom of the heap. So, we have duties that are both, some are pleasant and some are unpleasant. So, but equally, there are duties, right? And our mind naturally gravitates towards those duties that are easy and kind of pleasant and sort of fun for us to do. Like I remember, for a student, your duty is studying, right? Your homework. So I remember when I would come home from school, in high school, I would do the homework that I liked first. I just remember very clearly. I would sit down and straight away do all my favorite homework. Anybody want to guess what my favorite homework was? Huh? Oh, yeah, good guess. I was already studying Japanese at that time, so Japanese was also my favorite homework from age 14. Oh, I loved it. I'd sit down and do it. Spent a long time doing it. What was my least favorite homework? I'm just sharing, you know, it doesn't matter now, it's a long time ago. Huh? No, math was one of my favorites. Yeah. History, believe it or not, because now I'm a history freak, right? And English I hated English. Huh? So doesn't that just show you exactly the human nature? Your mind goes towards all those things you like, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do those other things. So no one needed to tell me to do my math homework or my Japanese homework. But my parents probably had to get on my case, even though I don't remember anymore, for doing history homework and other homework. So like this, duties that you like, nobody has to tell you to do them. You should eat that tasty dish or something like that, you know? But it's that, you know, it's the things that you don't like that you need to be told how to do. Here, Krishna is telling him how to do the unpleasant duties that he doesn't want to do, basically. And the most important quality that we have to have, he's telling him here, is same krutva. Same krutva. That means what do we have the translation? Equanimity. This is the main point that's transitioning into karma yoga. When you do something, you have to have equanimity. Equipoise, however you want to translate it. Samatvam, later he's going to use that word, which is the same thing. Samatvam is equanimity. So don't let the situations carry you away, whatever they may be. It's the capacity to remain cool even in a very difficult situation. Now you can be a genius, but if you're disturbed mentally, your thinking power is not going to be at your disposal, right? So you have to have that equanimity in order to harness all your talents. So if you lose your equipoise, you're not only going to lose your judgment, but you're also going to lose your ability to learn from difficult circumstances. Does that make sense? When we're resentful, we never learn from hardship. So Amma says that suffering is our greatest guru. You may have read that in her book. Suffering is your greatest guru. Pleasure doesn't teach us anything, basically. But without samatvam, or without that equanimity, even suffering won't be able to teach us anything. Or we won't be able to learn anything from suffering. It's trying to teach us something. It's trying desperately to teach us something. But if our mind is disturbed, we're not going to learn the lesson. Another analogy that's been used before is, what do you use to sharpen a knife? What do you use? Whetstone, right? Ever tried to use a sponge to sharpen a knife? Is it going to get sharp? Huh? So which kind of circumstance sharpens the mind in life? The rough circumstances sharpen the mind. But let's say you have a whetstone and you're trying to sharpen the knife, but the knife is vibrating violently. Are you going to be able to sharpen it? No. So the rough circumstances in life can only help us sharpen our mind if the knife or if the mind is relatively still. Otherwise, it just is a rough experience. That's all. We had a really rough time, we might say, right? It means that our mind was disturbed. We didn't get the lesson. I think I've mentioned the difference between IQ and EQ. Did you all remember that? Did we talk about that here? We didn't talk about that? Okay, we're talking about it now. So, when I was a kid, IQ was supposed to be really important. I remember, our parents said, you guys took an IQ test and we know your IQ. And we were like, really? And they're like, but we're not going to tell you. So it was like, we don't want you to know your IQ because it's not good. Something like that. So it was such a big deal, And then we thought it was really important. But I'm told that in today's world, psychologists are not giving as much importance to IQ anymore. They're giving more importance to emotional quotient. Because, like we hinted earlier, EQ determines how much benefit you get from your IQ. What do you get out of that IQ, right? It's kind of like the example I give. Sometimes I use, my cultural references are all from the 80s, because that's the last time I was really in America. John McEnroe, I just remember this amazing athlete he's so talented. It's all just thrown into the dumpster with his emotional disturbance. He has an EQ of like 9, I think, or something like that, He had an athletic IQ of about 300. He was so talented. But his EQ, the guy couldn't hold his temper at anything. So, he probably played horribly because of, just imagine if he were balanced mentally, how much better athlete he could have been. I don't watch tennis, don't get me wrong. In those days, it was a big deal. So, this is what we're talking about. EQ determines whether you're able to harness your IQ. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, look, all you need to do is focus on your EQ. Don't worry about, sharpening your arrows or your sword or anything like that. That's not going to be any use if you don't have a peaceful mind, or if you lose all your equipoise. Even Olympic gold medalists fail sometimes, right? So 100% success is impossible. Amma said that success in life is really only the capacity to face success and failure without being disturbed. That's real success. So Lord Krishna is not teaching Arjuna or us how to succeed always. He's just saying how to face both success and failure. And the word he's giving us is same kritva, evenness of mind. And he cites three opposites, which are very important for us to remember. We should tattoo these on our forearm or something. Pain and pleasure, or comfort and discomfort, however you want to put it. Gain and loss, success and failure. These are like the three pairs of obstacles that we're constantly battling with. Pain and pleasure, gain and loss, success and failure. He says, accept them all equally. Who can do that? It's a very important point. This is the essence of Karma Yoga, basically. That's why he's saying at the beginning, saying this is the crystallized version, this is the digested version. This is what you need to learn. If you can do that, you'll be able to be a Karma Yogi. He's going to tell him about what a Karma Yogi is later too. Likes and dislikes cause the pleasure and pain. And those likes and dislikes are the source of the problem. If you remove those likes and dislikes, you can get rid of all your suffering. So, in order to do that, we have to have a higher ideal that transcends our sort of worldly likes and dislikes. I'll give you an example. Is there anybody that likes waiting in line here? Anybody likes waiting in line? Okay. How about waiting in line for Amma's darshan? Right? I think we're all ready to wait in line. You don't necessarily like it, but it's got a value now, right? So a unpleasant thing can become pleasant if it's for a higher ideal, right? So waiting in line for something really valuable is worth it. So if we have attachment to our own comfort, we're never going to be able to do our dharma. So this is what Krishna is trying to tell to Arjuna. Forget about your comfort, forget about all these things. Do your dharma just for the sake of dharma. Don't worry about success, failure, all this other stuff. It's irrelevant. And how does he know that Arjuna is preoccupied with his comfort? Because earlier in the Gita, end of chapter 1, beginning of chapter 2, Arjuna says, how can I be happy if I do this and that and this and that? So the focus is on my happiness, right? So it is possible to enjoy life without attachment. We tend to think that enjoyment always has to bring about some kind of attachment. But Amma shows us that enjoyment and detachment can coexist. You know, we used to, long time ago, I haven't seen Amma do it recently, we used to, sometimes there'd be movie night in Amritapuri. This is like in the early 90s. And we would sit in the sand. I don't know where they got the screen and this projector from. It just came from out of nowhere. And I mean, I was astonished when the first movie showing took place. It was like, what is this? And I went over there and, all these brahmacharis that had been sitting for like scriptural classes and the girls too, sitting there watching, some spiritual movie, but they're like dancing and talking about Krishna or Rama or something like that. And I was like, it just culturally it didn't quite click with me, but everybody was totally engrossed, and I got engrossed also. And right when it came to the climax of the movie, Amma would turn it off. And she said, that's enough, I'm going back to my room. And you're like, so it's like so perfect timing. I can't tell you how many times that happened. For me, I was like, okay, I'm going to bed, but because it was like 12 o'clock at night by that time, But everybody else was so attached to the story, and they wanted to see the rest of it. But for Amma, it was the sign of like this detachment. She enjoyed the movie with everybody, but she was ready to turn it off at any time. So like that, she's so detached. The remote control is in her hand, right? She can do whatever she wants. So Krishna is saying, if you work in the world with this attitude of non-attached, samatvam or equipoise, you'll never incur sin. Or in other words, you'll never diverge from the path of dharma. If you learn that your expectations are the cause of all your sorrows, then you know what the solution is. Point the finger at your own expectations and not at other people. These internal shortcomings of ours are getting exposed by the circumstances. That's what is happening to Arjuna. One person said, adversity introduces a person to himself. Have you heard that? It's a nice quote. Adversity introduces us to ourselves. It shows us what we're really made out of. So after this, Krishna has exhausted all his arguments. He tried samadana, veda, everything with Arjuna. He didn't have to try danda, beating him over the head. Fortunately, probably we are the ones who are getting beaten over the head because we need it. But now this subject of karma yoga, what is it? Well, how do you practice karma yoga, and what does a karma yogi look like? So next class. Next week is a big weekend for us. Very big weekend. We're hoping that everybody will participate in one way or another. I could go on for hours about the importance of the programs we're going to be conducting. But suffice it to say that, particularly the permaculture program, Ayudh is for Ayudh, but the permaculture program is really a kind of dharma. It is, we have strayed so far from our dharma to Mother Nature that we've completely forgotten what it means to live in harmony with nature. So finally we have like the gem falling, tripping over a gem, or the nectar falling in your mouth when you yawn. It's like that. Amma's giving us like a world-class expert to come and teach a class on how to live in harmony with nature, how to be at harmony with yourself, because Amma says we're one with nature. Now we're living out of harmony with ourselves. We're totally disconnected from nature, which means we're disconnected from ourselves. So if you're wondering, why are we having this program here? What is the purpose? What relevance does it have in my life? This is what it is. I would say that in order to live Amma's teachings properly, we have to understand these concepts of sustainable living. So if you have any further questions about it, you're welcome to ask me. But this is just a background explanation of why it's so important. And I hope everybody can participate. We're almost out of time. I thought we'd have lots of time left for questions today, but if you have any questions, we're going to resume the class, not next week, again, it'll be the week after that. But if you have any questions about today's content, please ask.
Bhuji has a literature question.
Okay.
Fame equal kirti.
Mm-hmm.
Infamy is akriti, kirti or something else?
Akirti. Akirti. Kirti, akirti. Mana, apamana, like that. Fame, infamy. Mana, apamana is name, ill repute or something like that. Say like that. Bad name, ill fame. Kirti is like glory, actually. Kirti is glory, and like, what's the opposite of glory in English? I don't know, we have to think of that. Any other questions? Today is a different kind of content, right? We're talking about how a guru really tries hard to convince his or her disciple to walk the path of Dharma. So you can be sure, if you stray from your Dharma, whatever it might be, Amma would really go to any length to help you. She may employ some unusual lines of reasoning, but the goal is pure. The goal is the highest. Only when we get back on the path of Dharma is there any hope of reaching self-realization. If the train gets off the track, even if the engine is running, it's going fast in the wrong direction. First you got to get the train back on the track. That's the number one thing. So today is about getting the train back on the track. Then he can start talking about spirituality again.
So last week I know that from medicine they had question, but we ran out of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think they asked, how we will know what is our duty. I know that we were talking about the duty.
How does one know what his or her duty is? We talked about it a little bit, actually.
We spoke in the campfire.
Campfire.
Yeah, I know.
Ah, really?
Yes.
We didn't talk about it here?
No, because we ran out of time.
Oh.
We discussed it in the campfire.
Do we want to
already
talk about?
discussed
Do we want to talk about that now, or because we only have about 5 minutes left, we can talk about it. Okay, I'll talk about it over here. I'll use the whiteboard for that. So, the word that we had for one's own duty, anybody remember what it was in Sanskrit? Huh? What was the word in Sanskrit for one's own duty? Comes up. Swadharma. Dharma means duty. Swadharma. Swa always means my own. So, Swadharma. It's really actually B, not W. Swadharma. So, there's at least 3 factors that contribute to that. One is something that we might all imagine. Your birth. Or what we call in India, jati. Another one is your present work. Another one is your mental qualities. Okay? So last time we talked about the 4 different sectors of society. Anybody remember what those are? I'm going to save time. Write them on the board.
Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya.
Yeah. And Brahmas. Okay? So this is jati, this is karma, it means work, and this is guna in Sanskrit. Does this all make sense what I'm writing? Okay? So you have your birth, what kind of family you're born into. Let's say you're born into a family of what would it be, farmers, right? And you just kind of naturally gravitate towards farming. That's a possibility. You may not, but you may. And then karma, your work, what you're doing, irrespective of what kind of family you were born into, you find yourself, when you ask that question, what is my dharma? You're already doing something, whatever it may be. When you're old enough to ask that question, you're already old enough to have some kind of occupation. So you're doing something. Well, look at yourself. What am I doing already? Right? Maybe that's my dharma. Then, that's karma. And then, the mental qualities, or we call guna. So, do you think that all 3 of these line up for most people? Should they? Would they? Ask yourself. Just ask yourself. What kind of family was I born into? What did my mother and father do? Ask yourself. Just answer that question, okay? Now, what are you doing now? Raise your hand if they're the same. You're doing the same thing that your parents were doing. 1 or 2 people, a few people, okay? Now, how about you're doing some job, whatever it is, and you have certain mental qualities that either contribute to, help you do that job, or kind of make that job a little difficult for you. So how many people are find that their mental qualities make their job, or sort of facilitate their job? Okay. So that's a kind of a sign that you found the right occupation for yourself. We're just talking about work right now, jobs, right? Or your role in society. Which actually is really the first question about Swadharma, because if you haven't figured out what your mission in life is, then it's tough to answer individual specific questions. So now, what that means is that you can be a mixture of all 3 of these based on different levels, right? By birth, you can be born into a family of business people. And remember what I said last time, these sectors of society are really present everywhere throughout the world. It's not just India, even though we say India has a caste system, blah, blah. These people exist in every country. We talked about that last time. They just don't call them by those names. They're there because that's how society functions. Society needs all these types of people. So let's say you're born into a family of business people. And let's say that actually you're really drawn towards like spiritual things. You want to read books and all that, you know, and you want to meditate and everything. But what you're doing is you're teaching something in school, whatever. Just as an example. So by birth, you're a let's say, no, not teaching. Let's say you're working as a security guard. Okay, just as an extreme example. So by birth, you're a Vaishya. Your mental qualities are Brahmana because you're interested in spiritual things, and your job as a security guard means you're like a Kshatriya. So you're a mixture of all three. But the ultimate deciding factor is what? Which one do you think is the ultimate deciding factor of these over here? In determining what you should be doing.
Where you wanted to, what you wanted to do, you go towards that.
So that, which of these do you think that would fit in on this left side here? Yeah, exactly. That's why Krishna says that in the fourth chapter. He says that he created the four varnas, or the four, colors of the mind, so to speak. And he just calls it the four colors. He created them based on mental qualities. So he makes it very clear that it's not based on birth. So our dharma, our path in life, really depends on our mental qualities, but it will also be influenced in part by what we're doing now. If you're already doing something, it can be easy to continue to do that. And one last thing is, if you're born into that family, it can be very easy for you to carry that on. Amma often tells children to continue the work that their father or mother was doing. I've seen it many times. Kids of doctors often they say, why don't you go to med school? Kids of lawyers, they say, why don't you go to law school? I've seen it many times. And often they do it, but it becomes clear if that person's not suited for that thing, it becomes clear soon, and then she's fine with them doing something else. But the question of having an advantage being born into that family is undeniable. I remember, because I may have told you, some of you, that my father was an attorney, and I remember growing up, from as soon as I can remember, as soon as I was old enough to understand anything, they were talking about cases at home and laws and all these kinds of things. And my parents were, and then he would take us to the office, and we'd wander around. And then when we were old enough to do something, he would give us a job, and we would do things in the office. And by the time I was in college, I knew a lot about just practicing law, just because I was hearing it all the time. So it would have been easy for me to do it. So rather than starting from scratch. But also it meant that I could see what the life of a lawyer was, and I knew I didn't want it. Didn't want to do it. So that's what it also showed me, in my case. Okay. Someone wanted to ask something. Yeah, Vijay. Yeah?
What determines your mental abilities?
Mental qualities. What determines your mental qualities? Mental abilities included.
So you're born into a family because of your vasanas or samskar. How does it work?
You're born into a family because of your prarabdha, of your karma. Because means that you're born in that family because you have to have certain experiences for your spiritual growth. That's why you're born into that family. You need to have that mother, you need to have those siblings so you can fight with them instead of somebody else, or whatever it is.
But the abilities that you come with?
Now the abilities are mental qualities. Where do those come from? You guys tell me.
Come from your past life.
And how? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I think. How do they come from your past lives? It's true, but how do they come from them?
But you said everything comes
Everything comes from. The ultimate determining factor is your mental qualities. Yeah, so I'm asking you, where do you, she said the answer from a past life, but how do you get mental qualities from a past life? That's the.
You said only three gunas.
Trigunas is just, that's just an explanation of what those qualities are, not where they come from. Yes, Ram?
Maybe it's the, like you said, the spiritual momentum, vasana.
Exactly. See, Krishna answers it really in the 6th chapter, but it's answered elsewhere too. It's whatever momentum we create in our past life, that's that momentum you end up with when you're born. Right? You know, we ask that question because we don't remember what we did in past lives. That's the only reason why we ask that question. So, like, let's say you're watching, you know, a baseball game or something like that, and you've got all these tools and equipment measuring the velocity of the ball and measuring exactly how the bat is hitting the ball and the weight of the ball and all the speed of the wind and all that. So, at the time the person hits the ball, if you have a fast computer, you can probably calculate exactly where the ball is going to go, right? There's no mystery to it. But what happens if someone says, open your eyes now, right when they hit the ball? You're not going to have any idea where the ball is going to go. That's how we are when we're born. It's like you're born when the ball hits the bat. And then it's like, where is this ball going? Because we don't remember any of the things that happened before that. We don't understand the vector, the velocity, the speed, you know, all that, the momentum, because we forgot. So, you know, if you introspect and you see what is your mind drawn to? That's why Amma says, look how people spend their free time. That tells you what their mind is drawn to. How we spend our free time is very edifying about our nature. You know, that tells us what we're interested in. We don't need anybody to analyze it really, huh? I think Savita had a question, but just over time what I'm going to do is, I should probably end, and we'll give people a chance to go home who have to, because that's what we're supposed to do. And people who have questions can stay, no problem. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti 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 Om Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Lokaha Samastaha Sukhino Bhavantu Om Shanti 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 Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So sorry for going over time, but this is where we take a moment in between sections, and those whose schedules permit, we invite you to stay for a short meditation. Otherwise, everybody's welcome to go if they have to. The official ending time is supposed to actually be 9:30. If you're able to stay, please sit in a comfortable posture. Keep your spine straight and close your eyes. Slow down your breathing. Make it deeper. And slow it down even further. Imagine you're breathing in peace and breathing out relaxation. Try to feel Amma's subtle spiritual presence here with us in this very hall, within you. Take yourself deeper within by focusing on the rhythm of your breath. Try to merge your awareness in the gentle flow of each inhalation and exhalation. Now trying to dive even deeper beyond the breath. Plunge deeper to the core of your own being. Feel the stillness there. In the silence and stillness of your inner center, remain as a witness to all the attachments and emotions of the mind. They come and go, changing constantly through infancy, childhood, youth, adulthood and old age, all the attachments come and go. We are the one watching all this transpire. Diving even deeper, immerse your mind in the peace and bliss at the core of your soul. Now let us open our hearts and pray to Amma with the innocence and love of a small child to its mother. Oh, my beloved Amma, please help this child. Please help all your children stay on the path of Dharma. Don't let me be deceived by my mind. Don't let the attachments and emotions make me stray from the correct path. Help me remain detached from everything but you, because you are the only one who gives me permanent happiness, who guides me to the true self. If I ever become attached to the wrong thing in life, you must show me, Amma. Show me the correct path. Bring me back to the light. That's my prayer to you. Now we'll chant the concluding prayer. Take a deep breath. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnāād Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamādāya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namah. Harihi Om. One more long deep breath. And as you exhale, slowly open your eyes. Om Namah Shivaya. Good night.